So, is Predbat breaking your inverter? Probably not. It's not an exciting a headline, I'm afraid. Still, and just to respond to the Speak to the Geek video here on the inverters issue that he raised, there is actually a sensible technical issue behind here, which is to do with the life of flash memory and the way that when registers are updated, some inverters, including the give energy ones, then store the register values to a flash memory so that if you lose power on the inverter, it keeps the value. And obviously those flash memories have a finite life. They're just a bit like an SSD disk, for example. So what happens when you write to them is that it actually just kind of in a ledger cancels the old value out and writes a new value and says, oh, this is the new value for this location. And then essentially, when you get an entire block of memory in the flash where all of them are, oh, these are all values that are cancelled, it essentially does an erase cycle on it, on the block, and then reuses that block again. And obviously, across the entire flash memory, each block can only be erased so many times. So eventually, you'll get less and less flash memory as all the blocks have been erased too many times until eventually the system fails because it can't get any flash memory anymore. Speaking to give energy on this, it sounds like about one register write every 5 minutes is probably okay, because if you work that out based on the stated lifetime of the flash memory and the block usage, you're probably talking about 1 million writes in the lifetime, and that would average to about 10 years. And to be honest, your warranty is only going to be 10 years anyway at the best. And obviously, this is a stated life of the flash. So the reality is it's going to live longer than that. Manufacturers don't design things to fail at exactly the stated life. The stated life means most of the parts have to live that long because they don't want to have to replace large numbers of them. So that means in reality, most of the parts will live a lot longer, and it could be twice as long, for example, in which case you'd never see it. Now, I think specifically about a couple of failed inverters, which are the older ones due to flash memory. It's not exactly clear what automations they were running, but obviously the balancing inverter type things are particularly intensive on writes and likely to cause the issue there. Good news is, of course, give energy are just going to provide a fix for the problem, but obviously that doesn't necessarily help for other manufacturers. So what I've been doing is just working on some things to help with this, to ease people's minds and sort it out. So one thing I've added to Predbat now in the latest release is a total register writes counter. It's not actually counting register writes; it's counting calls to write to the system. So exactly how those translate to register writes depends on the layer underneath, which may coalesce multiple together and it may be less, or they may split them up and it could be more, but it gives you an order of magnitude. And I guess what you're looking at is this to be, if it's less than 200 a day, then you shouldn't have any issue at all. If you're starting to get towards 2,000 a day or something like that, a 10x factor, then you've suddenly got a problem. But so far, I've not seen anybody who's getting that number. And incidentally, this 145, most of this was me testing and fixing a bug. It's not actually what my normal system is. So if I look at the chart here, it's gone flat again when I fixed the issue. This was essentially, and it wasn't really writing a register, it was writing something that wasn't actually changing and would been thrown away at the next layer down the tree. But it was counting it as if it was anyway, because I had a typing mistake. So the other thing I've done is I've made a new release of Predbat, so that obviously includes that counter there, so you can check whether it might be an issue in your system, and if so, maybe tweak some settings or report some problems if you're seeing any issue with Predbat. So there's that. I've also improved the frequency of register writes. So in some cases, I've removed some needless writes. So for example, if you're using time pause, there's no need to adjust the charge or discharge rate on the thing you've paused because that's already done it. If you're using low power mode, which is the one where you charge at a lower speed than full over a time slot, then I've kind of reduced the frequency in which it's going to change the power amount just by allowing a wider margin in the settings. So I'll see how that goes and whether it, as a result, means less register writes. I think people using low power mode were seeing 30 or 40 writes in a charging session overnight, which is still absolutely fine, but good to get it down lower. And actually in the low power mode, unrelated to this, I've added a new margin control where you can set how much time in advance you want the charge to be done. So it was hardwired at 10 minutes, but you can change that now up to 30 minutes or down to 0. I also changed something in the optimizer, and it's experimental. I think it works, but it'd be interesting to see how people get on with it. So generally, depending on whether you've got combined charge true or false and the type of tariff, you can have 30-minute charge slots, or you can have longer charge slots. So combined charge is off, then all your charge slots are 30 minutes. Or indeed, even if it's on, if the particular tariff has got 30-minute slots on it, so like Agile, for example, then they'll all be 30 minutes. I've changed the algorithm just to calculate whether it wants to charge in that slot or not. So no charge, charge, or freeze charge, but not to calculate a charge percentage. Part of that is it's kind of a little bit pointless because most of the time the charging is dictated by the rate. So, and it's such a short time period that kind of half charging in a 30-minute slot doesn't really have much impact on the overall plan. But it does mean you keep having to change the charge target percentage register as well. So I've tried changing that. It seems to be okay so far, but please feedback. And if it's a problem, I can maybe put it on a toggle or revert it or come up with another way. Obviously, if you've got a larger window with combined charge on, then it'll just calculate the percentage for that entire window that you need to hit. So that's really it for that release. So yeah, I think the message there is no, your inverter's probably not going to be broken unless you're doing something special like balance inverters, which happens very, very frequently. But check it out, find out how many writes you're getting, make sure it's not too many, and if it is, then we can look at the issue. Give energy users will be lucky to get some fix, which will basically mean it won't use the flash memory for the register updates. You'll be able to turn that off. But obviously for other inverters, whether it uses flash or not and the lifespan of that flash, I don't really know. So obviously these optimizations are useful for everybody. Anyway, I hope you find that useful. Just on other topics, obviously there's been some other releases recently. The most recent one beyond that, I was going to mention, is the Octopus free energy sessions. So I added some support for this through the Octopus integration, so that it'll automatically detect the free energy sessions should you actually be signed up to those. The only thing is that the Octopus energy integration is taking those free sessions not from an official source, it's taking it from some other database, which last time wasn't really updated in time. So I also have an option, if you want it, you can add this Octopus free URL to the Octopus homepage, and Predbat will also try and scrape the free sessions directly from the Octopus website. But here it obviously doesn't know if you're signed up for them, so it'll just assume you are. And obviously I can't guarantee their website might not change format in the future, so this might not work as well, but we've got both methods active. That could be useful. So that's a useful one. The other major change recently is I renamed all the usage of what was called discharge in the plan to export, and essentially also used the word demand rather than idle. And that's because it was confusing people. Idle, some people thought that meant the battery was doing nothing, whereas actually it's in demand mode. And so this did rename a few entities as well. So if you're missing some entities, you probably find they've got the new name. You can cause one chart if you've got the Apex charts version needing updating as a result. Yeah, so that's about it for the recent things. Hope you find it useful, and it's nice to see that it's not all going to be broken. Thanks very much for watching.